Okay, build a lead bank. So what I'd like to just kind of run through today is talk a little bit about what a lead bank is, prospecting and promotions, which is similar to the conversation we just had. 20 ways to build a lead bank. It's not difficult. It just all takes a little bit of effort. Targeted prospecting. Have a little bit of a reminder about not wasting money on marketing to the wrong sorts of people. Talk a little bit about routes to market, and then call to action, and then there's some resources that I can share with you as well. Okay. The way I think about a lead bank is it's a bank like somewhere that holds money rather than a bank like a grassy knoll. So we put money into the bank and it just keeps building up. It's secure, it stays there. It probably does lose a little bit of value sat in the bank, as it doesn't account for inflation if it's in a zero interest account, but it just sits there. And then we make withdrawals from the bank when we want to make the withdrawals from the bank. So this is the thought process after we've got the rest of the circuit at least in place in some way. Is, well, hang on, how can we just get more money going into the lead bank and then make the appropriate withdrawals when we kind of need it. And the first probably person I heard articulate this in this way was a guy called Dan Kennedy, quite a few years now, probably 5 or 6 years ago. There is quite a good YouTube video where he just talks about the concepts of lead bank and building up lead banks, which is worth thinking. So it's not a funnel. It's not like funnel thinking. It's just generate leads, and we'll withdraw from the lead bank as and when we're ready to. Okay, so you've got the kind of the marketing things. You've got the promotions and prospecting ways of generating leads, and they're kind of different thinking processes, those two as well. And then obviously sales, it's sales effectively that's making the withdrawals. But we've got those two different feeds into generating the lead bank. So, I mean, if I was to ask you how many ways, it's not how many, but how many ways do you currently generate leads at the moment? You talked about content and content marketing, good. Educational videos might be a way of spinning out the content. Audio content, just the same content, just on audio. Podcasts, books, ebooks, guides, we talked about that. Templates, the kind of templates of things that people might want. Collaborations with other people, that can possibly be a good way. Running events, attending events, you kind of talked about that in terms of the networking with that. Running challenges, answering people's questions in forums, speaking, getting featured in local magazines for the niche, for the thing that you do, a bit of PR, hosting meetups, they all kind of could work. Collecting resources together. There's a guy that used to work as the chief marketing officer at Infusionsoft, it was called Infusionsoft, called Greg Head. He left a few years ago, and he developed something in Arizona which he called Greg's List. So you've heard of Craig's List, but this was Greg's List. Now, what Greg Head does is he basically works with startup tech companies. That's his thing. But I don't mean startup, some guy in a shed put a computer together. I'm talking about kind of VC funded startups. They've raised 2 million and they'll need to raise another 20 or 30. So he's working with them. So he's got a list of all the startup companies in all the tech companies in Arizona.
Okay.
And he just compiled it. And now he has lots of people who come to Greg's List in order, it's basically a resource directory.
Okay.
But everybody comes to Greg's List. He actually moved to Texas, so he's now got Greg's List, which is Texas. He still maintains the Arizona one, but he's got the Texas one as well. So people are coming to Greg's List because he's the one that's consolidated all the information together.
Okay.
And everybody knows him. Everybody knows Greg because they want to be on Greg's list, and they want to talk to Greg about him. Well, do those people? Do you know those people? You know, and Greg knows everybody in Texas in the tech business. So it's not that he's done anything; he's collated things to make the resource, which is cool. You know, creating tools we've kind of talked about, reviewing other companies and other things that, you know, that can be a way of generating leads. Hosting prizes, you know, the X Prize. Peter Demides hosts a company called the X Prize. The first X Prize was $10 million in order to for the first commercial non-government sponsored orbital spacecraft into orbit. So there's a definition of what, not orbit, into space actually, there's a line, $10 million. So the people that won it spent $100 million winning $10 million, but then they sold the rights for that thing to Richard Branson, which is where Virgin Galactica comes from. That's the craft that was kind of used there.
Yeah.
Let me just get rid of that. And so you know, hosting prizes. If you look up the X Prize, there's loads of different things they do. Interviewing experts, that can work. Direct marketing, we talked about, and then you know, the 100 people list. So there's just sort of 20 ideas. Now you're doing some of those. I know that you're doing some of those, and it's just a case of, it does take time. You know, it takes time, but it's just layering one on another one on another one on another one, and before you know it, you've got half a dozen going already.
Yeah.
And you know, you end up the end of 2021, you might end up, okay, well, can we get 15 lead gen pillars in there?
Yeah.
That would be good. Cool. In terms of prospecting, this is a great book, Chet Holmes, which is The Ultimate Sales Machine. I can't remember which chapter it is, but one of the things he talks about was, and this is B2B sales that he's referring to, not B2C.
Yeah.
But if you actually research out and write down the top, he says 100, well, maybe it's less than 100 around where you're, depending on your geographical point of interest. But what are the names of the top companies that you want to work with in the next 5 years? Because if you can't write them down, then how are you ever going to end up working with them?
Yeah.
So as an exercise, just write down, well, actually, I want to work with this company and this company and this company. And if you get a list of however many, then you look at that and you go, well, can I prioritize the low-hanging fruit out of that list and come up with a top 20? And then, so these would be people that you know they've got a compelling need for a solution that your kind of offering is strong on.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's my list of people. Well, now I'm just going to figure out a way to approach them, to which for most of them, they're going to ignore me for a while. But that's Google just talking to me in the background. I don't think I even said the word Google, but she sparked up. You know, and this is a lot of persistence. So if you've got the, I can imagine on a whiteboard on the wall somewhere, you've got a list of the top 20, and yeah, you look at it every morning and, well, what am I going to do today to just try and chip away at that list and end up engaged with these top 20 customers? I've got 5 years to do it. There's no rush. But if I consistently do that, maybe in 5 years' time, I'm working with 18 of the top 20 desirable companies. Happy days. Okay. Oh, sorry, the thing that appeared at the bottom there, that's where kind of Sales Navigator is your friend there. In order, all the information you'll ever need is probably on LinkedIn Sales Navigator somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's kind of a resource, but you know, if you want to know who the finance director of a particular company is, the chances are he's on LinkedIn, and you can find him in Sales Navigator.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you can see, well, what's he following? Is he in any groups? Should I join the groups he's in and comment and get to know him? And you know, just in the same way as you do networking physically, you do networking online, kind of in the same manner. If you're in the same golf club, then you do business with people in that golf club. If
Yeah.
you're not in the golf club, you've got a lot less chance of doing business with them.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that's prospecting. Then we've got promotions, and just a reminder of this slide, we've covered this a couple of times before. Throw out, it's the way to avoid wasting money on crappy marketing. The sequence is market, message, media. So who is my target market? What's the role, age, gender, situation, income bracket, company they work for, sort of profile that they've had in the past, those sorts of things. And you can have more than one target. It's just they are on different targets. That's okay to have more than one target. I just can't shoot one arrow at more than one target at the same time. But I can shoot at different targets. So we figure that out as best we can. We've got our targets. We then, for that target, well, what is the pain? What is the pain? What solutions are they kind of looking for? Does our product fit in with that? Will it give them any benefits? And if not, then maybe that we're not the right people to work with them. But if it does, that's good. So I've got a good understanding of who I'm trying to get to. I understand the language and the messaging that I need to be using. And then the media really is all about, okay, so how can I then get to those people? So you can imagine a combo of prospecting and promotions here. If you were prospecting for your top 20 list of businesses in the geographical region, for example, that you wanted to do business with, okay, so what sort of problems do those FD business owners have? Okay, so they're going to be more responsive to that sort of messaging than if I just send them a generic brochure or a generic email. We can make this as specific as possible. From a prospecting point of view, it is a one-to-one communication. Okay, we might be communicating the same very similarly with lots of different people. But for prospecting, it's a one-to-one, very targeted. If it's more promotion rather than prospecting, it can still be a bit broader or slightly more generic, but it still needs to be on point. It still needs to be on message. And the message is what they want rather than what we want. Okay, cool. Routes to market. So this little slide I put together a few years ago now, and I just kind of wrote down, it's by no means complete. There's many things that could go on this slide, but I kind of just wrote down kind of referral, direct response, networking, advertising, directory, and then I thought about offline and online and sort of got the equivalents. So across there, so offline networking is meetings and business clubs and BNI and those sorts of things, Chamber of Commerce, society seminars, conferences. And then the online version of that is LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and forums. But from a networking point of view, if you think about how you'd behave offline, if you were networking with people in a meeting, that's similar behavior you should do online if you try and talk to them on LinkedIn. Advertising, that's a different thing. That's a different thing from kind of the online advertising on LinkedIn versus the networking aspect of it. So if you take that slide, obviously I'll make these slides available to you, but if you took that slide and you took it sort of a red pen out and you drew a circle around all the things that you do at the moment, roughly how many red circles would you get, Paul? So if you look at this and you're thinking, well, if you circle half a dozen or so and you think, well, okay, well, can I use the same content and the same effort but just deploy it in different places as well and just expand the reach of things?
Just thinking there, Dave, actually, the direct response. So I am interested in the male to female list. So is there if, obviously with the GDPR, that's more difficult, but is there an easy way of getting lists that are, or do you just have to kind of build those up yourself on LinkedIn and try and do it that way?
Lists for emailing or lists for
Sorry,
postal?
for actually directing, because you go to companies now, you can't get anything because nobody wants to have give their emails out. So it's more a verified email list that you could use for marketing shots.
Yeah, it's tough and not necessarily a particularly productive. You can certainly buy email lists. There are people that will sell them to you. They always say, "Oh no, everybody's opted in." Yeah, well, that's rubbish, isn't it? Because they're not opted into my list. They didn't opt into me sending them emails.
Yeah.
The response rate you're likely to get is lower because they don't know you from Adam. But it rather depends on what you send to them as well, doesn't it? Because if you send them something pretty generic, they never heard of you. When they receive the email, the email software says, "I've no idea who this bloke is. He's not sent before. Therefore, I'm going to treat this suspiciously." When the robots read your email, and they do read your email, they don't understand it, but they do read it before they deliver it. And they go, "Well, this is just, I don't think my customer will want me to deliver this to them, so I'm not going to bother."
Yeah.
So getting inbox placement is harder. Let's assume you do get it in the inbox. If the person reads it and clicks on it, I'm going to say Google, but it or Yahoo or BT or whoever's delivering it will go, "Oh, okay, well, in that case, I'll deliver more of those." If they don't read it, don't click on it, then they go, well, maybe I won't bother delivering them next time. So bought lists for email marketing are pretty problematic, really. I wouldn't recommend it, but there are people that would buy a list, but they'd buy a big list because they know the percentages is going to be very low.
It's a numbers game, isn't it? Yeah.
So, and they can make it work on a very low percentage. It's still not a great idea. For us, for small businesses, you probably can't buy a big enough list to make the percentage worthwhile.
Yeah.
And then if you're putting a big list in a big send, Infusionsoft Keap's going to look at it and go, "No, that's outside the terms of use. We don't want people doing that," which is correct. So it's problematic. But if you were to, for example, if you think about, mailing to a list, if you've got a top 20 people that you want to work with in the next 5 years, putting together a shock and awe package of some description and posting it to them is much more likely to get you a response.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, although each of the packages you're posting out might cost you 10 quid and there's 20 of them, so that's 200 quid. But you spend more than 200 quid on the email list and not get any response at all.
Yeah.
So sometimes the economics, although per unit is a lot more, actually all you need, if you're sending 20 out, all you're needing is 2 or 3 to kind of respond. And you're phoning them up and saying, "Hey, look, I just sent you that package with some stuff in it." And they go, "Yeah, I remember it. Yes, I will have a conversation with you." And that was the objective of the marketing. The objective of the marketing is just get you into the conversation.
Yeah.
After that point, it becomes a sales conversation, not a marketing conversation. Different story, different skill set. But so, I am a fan of targeted low volume direct mail, and for that I definitely can buy a list. And actually, if you're only doing it to, say, your top 100 and you're only doing it to 5 a week, you don't even need to buy the list. You can scrape the list off LinkedIn because you know the person's name and where you're sending it to. So at the moment you've got, well, what happens if they're working from home? Okay, well, phone their office, talk to the receptionist and said, "I've got a package I need to post to Brian. If I post it to him, is he going to get it? Will your mailroom forward it to his home address?" And if they say, "No, we're not forwarding any mail," okay, well, I won't bother sending it this week then, unless they're going to give you his home address, which is unlikely. But most companies will go, yeah, we accommodate the fact that we're going to have to get mail to. It's been too long. It's been a year now. We've got to send some of this mail to the people. So most companies have figured out a way of getting the mail to their executives. So they'll get it. So that's just a kind of a way of expanding what you're already doing, and just saying, well, can we use the same materials, just reimagining it. That's our routes to market. That's how we're going to think about getting in front of the people, or how we could think about getting in front of the people, I think with the appropriate sort of mindset to it. And it takes time, but there's more, and you try something new this month, so if you tried something new every month, in 12 months time you'd have 12 new things. Let's say half of them worked and half didn't. Well, you've got 6 new things that work. You do that for 3 years and you've got 18 things that work. Well, I said you needed 20 and we're nearly there, but it's not instant. But are you still going to be around and in business in 3 years' time? Yes, therefore we make a plodding start. If you've got the resources, you can maybe try more things all at the same time. But I recognise everybody hasn't got a marketing department and a sales department and a endless resources of either money or people to do things. So you just do little bits. Okay, cool. So I mean that's amalgamated things together. Here's the kind of the to-do list, if you like, Paul, which is sort of brainstorm a list of 20 targets, avatars, the people you want to do business with maybe, and if you've got 10 specific names in companies and 10 generic avatar, or what, quite specific, but avatars, that would be good. And then if you've got a list of 20 possible ideas, so you've got this matrix, which is a 20 by 20 matrix. Actually, that's quite a big sheet of paper, isn't it, on a 20 by 20 matrix? Cross-reference them and you go, well, you know what? There's some priorities in here. I don't know what 20 times 20 is. That's probably 400, isn't it? Well, what's the top 20 within that? Or have your 400 cross-sectional probabilities? Okay, there's the 20. Great. So now I've got a prioritized list of my top 20 ideas of things I'm going to do in the next 6 months or 12 months, whatever it is. Can you delegate / outsource 10 of them and do 10 of them yourself? So SEO and that type of thing. Yeah, it might be that you've outsourced that to somebody that's doing that. If you do direct mail, it might be that you've outsourced the design of the copywriting and all that to somebody else. And then some other things you may say, well, I'm the right person to do that. Frankly, picking up the phone and trying to talk specifically to a business leader in your local community, you probably can't outsource that really. Following somebody's profile on LinkedIn and commenting when they post, yep, you probably can't outsource that too easily, because if they reply, it needs to be you that's sort of in a conversation with them, not a Filipino outsourcer. That kind of just doesn't work. But there are other things that you can outsource. The more generic things, if you can outsource it, it doesn't have to be expensive to outsource it. Just outsource bits and do something yourself. So there are I've got a ton of resources, but there is a good book, a guy from Marcus Sheridan, who wrote a book called They Ask You Answer. That's a good book, worth a kind of a read. What Marcus was one of the early originators of content marketing. He did the marketing for a swimming pool company might have been Arizona actually. Might have been Arizona, might have been Nevada. Actually, might have been Texas. But anyway, down the south in the States there. They had no money. They just had no money. So he started writing articles about swimming pools, below ground pools. The company he was working with for He was a co-owner, I think. I told you the story in the book. They made concrete swimming pools. So you dig a hole in the ground and you concrete, because the alternative is you put a liner in, a fiberglass liner. Well, they didn't do fiberglass liners. They did, but it didn't mean that he didn't discuss fiberglass liners and companies and, answers all the questions that people have. And he just blogged about that, such that he started to pick up the SEO juice, because he, on his website, if anybody was Googling it, he had all the answers. But he didn't use any tricks. It was just good quality content. So, one of the questions that people very often ask is, well, what should I write about? Well, write about what Marcus talks about in his book. He gives you 5 sort of categories that you can do, 5 things you could do. And when you read it, Paul, you go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I can do that. That's not as difficult as I thought content marketing was. Actually, I can actually do that. He lays it out quite well. That's a good book. Magnetic Marketing is a pretty old book now by Dan Kennedy. That's a good resource. That's been around for a while. And then The Ultimate Sales Letter, also by Dan Kennedy, it is very good on how to craft a direct mail type sales letter piece that can go out. It gives you some structure around that. It gives you why, and it also gives you the structure, and then it gives you the psychology of why that structure is a good structure. So it's a use. Again, it's a useful resource. But there are many. If you Google Dan Kennedy, he's got a lot of material. It looks a bit old and dated, but Dan Kennedy was sort of the grandfather of direct response marketing. Right. A lot of the gurus that are around now, the origin, if you trace it back, the lineage originated with Dan Kennedy. And people that follow Ryan Deiss and are reinventing Ryan Deiss's stuff. Well, where did Ryan Deiss learn his stuff from? With Dan Kennedy. Joe Polish, Frank Kern, Grant Cardone. Where did they learn their stuff from? Dan Kennedy. They all learned from Dan Kennedy. Okay. He was like the original source, and he was doing direct response marketing before the internet was invented. When it was paper and CDs and cassettes and things like that, and before, almost before computers were invented. What if it was a 3 mailing? Now we send emails out in different bunches, and somebody clicks on it, they don't get the next one. Well, what they used to do was they print out the labels. They print out 5 sets of labels. Okay. So they'd use all the labels from the first set for the first mailing. Then when they got orders in, they'd remove the label from the second set, so they weren't sending out the second thing to the people that have already ordered. Yeah. So it was an analog manual, but it was a multi-step direct mail campaign that he was doing, 30, 40 years ago. That's where a lot of the thinking kind of originated from. So well worth reading those couple of books, or getting those couple of books on your bookshelf and browsing them. Yeah. I've actually there is a library. I'm going to give everybody access to my kind of library. I've got an awful lot of material in the library, which is on an online website. It's on a Customer Hub website, which I'll give you a login access to. Obviously, it's copyrighted material that I can't sell, but I can certainly allow people to browse my library. Okay. And then you just go and help yourself to whatever you can find in there. If it's useful, happy days. Okay.